I get a lot of questions asked through emails, messages, and comments. And some of them I just can't answer in a paragraph. So today is another episode of the Quilt Coach. And the questions I'll be answering today are, how do I use these fabrics? Is there a no-waste snowball method? How do I get the bulk out of the center of my pinwheels? And how do I stop my fabrics from fraying? So grab your cup of coffee and stick with me while I'll show you how to do it. Hi there, I'm Karen Brown of Just Get It Done Quilts. I give you tips, tricks, and strategies to help you make the quilt that you want to make. And if you like what you see, please hit that subscribe button. I'm so close to 200,000, I'd really appreciate your support. My first question today is from an online store in Montreal. She sent me 4 fabrics and she asked me what is the best way to use them. So first, anytime you're looking at fabric, I say grab your templates. You can recycle any old cardstock to make them. I talked about how to make them in my video 10 sewing hacks with templates. And I showed you how to use them in my video playing with your fabrics. And we're going to use them here too. Immediately you can see that this is a large print, not really suitable for piecing, as you can see when we lay out our templates and shift them around. If you would cut it small, it would give an irregular color distribution, and the theme of the fabric would be totally lost. But where this fabric will shine is if you use it in the borders or on the back. What you can also see in the large scale is the unusual theme of the fabric. Though it has striking primary colors, you have this dark theme with the ravens and the eyeballs in the middle of the poppies. I see this working in a vintage dress pattern where the volume of fabric needed would suit the colors. And then people would take a second look when they saw the actual print, or use it in a place like the lining of a cape. I showed this fabric to a friend who told me that she didn't like the oranges of Halloween. She really liked this fabric. The second fabric are these juvenile prints. One has whales and one has mermaids. And I really love the diversity shown in these mermaids. They are cute, they are fun. One has a warm palette, one has a cool palette, and though they don't work necessarily together, they could be used exactly the same way in many different projects. Certainly a quilt, from a very simple pattern using 4-inch squares to a more complicated one. It can be used in curtains, all sorts of things. They are really cute fabrics. And fabric number 4 is my favorite. I think this is an amazing fabric. I think you just need to put it on your front page so that people know that you have it. Up close, it's a dot, but because there's an elongated shape of the dot, it actually can play like a stripe. And from afar, it turns into a diagonal stripe. And since you've watched my video on how to use stripes, you all know how to use this. So basically, this fabric could be used anywhere in a quilt. It can be used in the borders, in the sashing, in the binding, in the piecing, and with the assortment of colors, it can go either warm or cold. And these dots are not on a white background. It's definitely a cream, so it's not too high contrast. This is a fabric I would buy by the yard. If you guys are interested in any of these fabrics, I'll leave a link to her online store in the notes. The next question we have, Rosalind F. has asked me if I had any snowball hacks. Actually, I have a couple. When you are making snowball blocks, you are often making a lot of them. So the first tip is to use some template plastic to do the marking. Some pattern directions will tell you to make your marks on the smaller square, but I use this template to make my sewing marks on the larger square. With a template the size of the large square, I mark the corners of the small square. Then I draw a diagonal line between the 2 points and I repeat in every corner. Then I trim the template on this line. And it is critical for the block that your squares are perfectly square. And I will make these ledges out of masking tape. I slide my larger square into the corner and put the template on top and mark, making fast work of this task. Many people have also asked me, how do I avoid wastage on my snowball block? Honestly, this drives me batty too. And this is my second tip. So in method A, we are going to make a bonus HST block. We make 2 templates, one for the sewing line and one is a 1/2 inch away from that sewing line.
And then we mark this line as well.
Then we sew the smaller square to the larger square, and then we make another seam on that 1/2 inch line. Cut in between the two lines and press. And you can use this bonus HST block in your AFTERQUILT or in your crumb quilting, and I have a video on both of those topics, and I will put a link in the notes below. Now, method 2 is the no waste method. We make 2 templates. One is on the sewing line and the other is 1/4 of an inch away from that sew line. Now, whatever size smaller square that the pattern asks for,
You actually cut a square 3/8 of an inch larger.
then cut this square on the diagonal between the 2 corners.
On the large square, trim on the 1/4 inch line. Then lay the 1/2 square triangle down with
So that the edge of the 1/2 square triangle touches the outer line. And those 2 little bits on the outside are exactly the same size. Sew on the inner line. Note that if you use this method, you need to plan ahead, as you will need half the amount of squares that the pattern asks for.
but those squares are going to be 3/8 of an inch larger.
Diane Rizzo has asked, how do I keep my fabric from fraying? We quilt with woven cotton. It has a straight grain and a cross grain. Now, with many sewing disciplines, it's really important that your cross grain lies perfectly perpendicular to our selvages. In quilting, not so much, because very often the print on top of the fabric isn't perfectly aligned with the cross grain, and we are lucky in quilting that gravity isn't working against us. So we cut our fabric and we have this nice knife cut edge, and then we start moving our pieces around. We move them to our design board, then we move them to our sewing machine, then we iron it and we sew some more, and we repeat over and over again. And all this movement has frictions working against those exposed edges, and we get threads everywhere. The more the cross grain is showing, the worse it gets. Threads happen. There's not much you can do to prevent it, but there are ways that you may slow the spread. Number 1, cut your fabric as you need it. The shorter time that an edge is exposed, the fewer threads will come off it. Now, that's not always practical or logical, and very often the time it takes to complete a quilt is much longer than we initially expect. So use your discretion. Quilting cotton comes with starch and stabilizers in it, but if you pre-wash it, adding back in starch can help stabilize your edges. And when you store your finished blocks or flimsy, it's best to store them with the raw edges in the center. This also holds true when you're just storing fabric. And trim with a snip. I know you want to pull out those threads as you find them, but you might just pull those threads back into your seam allowance, which you really don't want. Some of you may be asking, do you really need to remove all the threads? And the truth is, no. The only time that it really becomes an issue is when you have very light fabrics with very dark fabrics. And you can trim and trim and trim, and still those loose dark threads can get underneath your light fabrics when you quilt them. So have a tiny crochet hook handy so you can slip in and grab them when they do. Tara in Windsor has asked, how do I spin my seams? So after you make your blocks, we have to sew our blocks together, and that produces all sorts of bulk in your piecing where the seams match up. Some quilters think that by pressing your seams open, you'll reduce bulk, and it might help a little, but it doesn't eliminate it. And in my opinion, the loss of strength in that seam just isn't worth it. If those stitches unravel, the batting underneath will be exposed. So another alternative to this is spinning your seams. Take a pair of blocks, sew them together, nesting those seams in the middle, and sew. But instead of folding everything to one side, you open this seam and this seam and press them in a circular motion following the direction of the previous seams. And you get this nice little twirly spot in the middle, and this is called spinning your seams. I often find it hard to open these seams after I sew, trying to find the right stitch to remove. So I often take the first stitch out before I sew it, so I'm not poking around quite so much. But you also need to come to terms with that your work is not going to be flat. You are working with fabric, you're not working with clay or wood or paper, and the way that we connect fabric is with seams. And it produces a ditch on one side and it produces a ridge on the other. And remember that some of that bulk will disappear into the thickness of the batting after you quilt it. That's it for today. If you have any other quilting questions, please send them to info@justgetitdonequilts and put Quilt Coach in the subject line. You'll find the links to all the videos that I referenced today down in the notes. Also check out last week's video, 6 ways to keep your quilt sandwich together. And if you haven't watched it yet, I have a great interview with Peter Byrne, winner of QuiltCon 2020 on Karen's Quilt Circle. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. You can also find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest at Just Get It Done Quilts, and you can download any of my STASHBUSTER patterns at justgetitdonequilts.com. So take care, and I'll see you next time.